Sure. My name is Mike McQuillan, like a quill pen, and the title of the essay is "The Traits of Leaves Can Teach Us." And the excerpt goes like this, from the very start of the piece. The impressionist lens of a nearsighted naked eye leaves nature's beauty pure. Rain pearls pause on branches to cleanse leaves' vacant spaces. Autumn's yellow-brown patina surrounds my sloshing boots. I walk slowly, perceiving dying leaves in detail. They crisscross on concrete, wind-strewn. Hardened edges curl, protective gestures as leaves pass elder days. My sister and I, when young, gathered leaf forts, leaping out and fancying foes to call ourselves heroic. Vic Morrow as Sergeant Saunders fought Nazi evil Tuesday nights on television. But Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the Catholic workers Dorothy Day inspire this adult. Essay writing is an opportunity for me to engage a distant person and by extension or implication a much larger local, national, and even international community potentially in a conversation which can range in many directions, all of which I have come to believe in the past 2 years of writing lead to the ultimate topic of our times, which is social justice. I look out a window in the living room corner of the apartment where I live with my family and note a tree immediately outside the window. And I've found myself looking closely in detail at the branch, the leaf, the trunk. I've been startled to realize that tree lived long before I began my life, and it will likely outlive me at the end of it. And somehow that speaks to me about things unseen by humans that we need to consider and perhaps could learn from to get out of our present predicaments. I decided to write it in the autumn season, not only for autumn's beauty, which initially captured my attention, as it would yours, I'm sure, or your listener, but rather I was struck by one leaf in particular that I had watched in a meditative way most mornings before starting my writing work of the day. And I was struck initially by the fact that that leaf is always there in torrential rain, in blistering sun, in high wind, whether I am happy, whether I am sad, whether I'm angry or at peace, that leaf is always there. And I started wondering about the life of the leaf. And when the leaf finally fell, I felt that I owed it something. I owed it a tribute, and I owed it a tribute in which I actively sought to learn from its short life. And I've learned about its resilience, its renewal, its dependability, and thought about the ebbs and flows of our own human lives and how we have to go through crises to discover the resilience that's always within us. And we learn to be able to intuit, infer, just as I did from the leaf. And I hope that in my writing, as I become better at my craft, perhaps the beauty of a phrase may create space for an unexpected insight on the part of the reader. My process is quite free associative. I think I've inwardly rebelled against the idea of formal outlines, although I have tried to educate myself about their worth and respect how great writers, famous writers, speak to their virtue as part of the writing process. But mine works better when I free associate. I scribble incoherently to others, though not by intention, on legal pads. And I find that a certain amount of scribbling clears out the clutter of the rational mind and creates a little space for that to coexist with feelings within the heart. And it's what's in the heart that becomes moving to us and thus to our readers if we learn to communicate it well. I think topics are as fresh as the morning news. Topics are as fresh as something that catches your fancy as you walk down the street. It can be, and for me recently was, a duck that I saw peacefully gliding along the ripples of the waves near the shoreline of the beach at Coney Island in Brooklyn, New York, where I live. Never before had I seen a duck by the beach. I'd seen plenty of seagulls, but I wondered about how that duck got to be there, what its life was like, where it was going, whether it would end up well, and actually ended up using that as the lead to a different essay. The topics are easy. I think the key thing is to not try too hard to make a finished piece from the start. I find it helpful for my own writing, and when, as a high school history teacher for 19 years, I learned to teach writing to students, and that is to pretend that you are having a conversation with your best friend, just as you and I are conversing now, Todd, because in this conversation, we're never at a loss for words. And when you talk to your best friend, you always have something to say. And so your best friend, by writing down those words, and then you later finding worth in what you have and filling in any blanks, and then starting to type it up, and all of a sudden doing that makes it look important, and that inspires you to continue. I would say to imagine, to think of your lead. What's the first thought that comes to your mind, and where do you want it to end up? Sort of like building a sandwich. I take 2 pieces of rye bread out of the refrigerator loaf, and then decide do I want to put some sliced turkey or some tuna fish in the middle. Or do I want to spice up something that I could cook, like a couple of scrambled eggs with some pepper or salsa? And what do you want the reader to come away with above all? If you were to meet the reader after the essay is complete, what would you hope the reader would think and share back with you as feedback? And ultimately, I think you want to create something that someone can use toward making the world a little bit better. Like, hopefully, I hope that my reader learns something and then can apply that learning to some sort of situation in his or her own life. And I think that's really the message of the little leaf on the branch, before it falls and after it falls, having done its job for us. Yes, Joan Didion's slim book, about 50 pages long, called Salvador, about her observations in El Salvador during the height of the conflict and crisis there that the United States was drawn into and helped to create, sadly and tragically, in the 1980s. And I say that because she has an exceptional eye for detail, which is one of the things that has made her famous. But she writes both from the head and the heart in Salvador. I would also say Donald, his book, Essays After 80, he's got sort of a cantankerous, rebellious attitude. He is up to good effect for a would-be essayist in that he writes about anything that strikes his fancy on a given day. And finally, President Kennedy, because when he was preparing his inaugural address in January of 1961, he wanted to read every previous inaugural address because he wanted to not just do a good job, but write a memorable speech. And he instructed his assistant, Ted Sorensen, to help him do that, and then together strike out every unnecessary word. Thank you. What a generous, kind offer. Yeah, I would like to also say, no one works alone. It's essential in every walk of life to consciously build a spirit of community. And I'm grateful, at my wife Sharon Kosikoff's encouragement, to have joined 2 writers' groups over the past year. One is the National Writers Union. Alexandra Faye hosts our Thursday night open mic readings, which have been of great value. Gabby Coatsworth in Fairfield, Connecticut, hosts the Writers' Mic Meetup. And finally, Danny Tisdale, publisher of Harlem World Magazine, Arlene Sachs with The Insider, and above all, Sandra Fluck, the senior editor of The Right Launch, often publish my work, thankfully, but they've also taught me a lot about how to aspire to first be good, and then if you think you can reach the good bar, how do you reach the next higher level? And that gives you fuel to guide your work. I am grateful to them, and I'm grateful to you, Todd, for honoring me with the opportunity of this conversation, and good wishes to your many listeners.